Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow slot car enthusiasts. Specifically also, of course, the 2024 CanAm proxy entrants and adherents, and hopefully the hosts. It's been a very interesting series, and unfortunately, like all things in life, it comes to an end, and this is now pretty much the end. It has become a sort of a benchmark in well, not a benchmark, but a number of the top proxies have this out-of-body experience, just to share with everybody some of the details of some of the more successful cars. And in my case, I thought I would also show a couple of cars that I found particularly interesting. So what we're looking at today would be the top three finishers, being Audi 1 in first place, Alan, congratulations, and Brumos Tony in second place, and the ever-present, when it comes to the podiums of slot car proxies, it seems like at the end of it, when the dust clears and the dust settles and all is said and done, CGY racer Rob is pretty much always there. And then the sort of bonus round, what I wanted to take a look at today are two of the cars that I found the most interesting in this proxy. Not top finishers. Well, in one case, in some events, it was a top finisher, but cars that I just found technically interesting and curious and just very well done, and I thought I would share that with everybody. In the first case of these is ALS's Autocoast TI-22. It's a very interesting model. Not just interesting, it's downright beautiful. And it's unfortunately it ended up with some battle scars on the front fender. As resin is, it tends to be somewhat brittle, and at one stage it took one too many trip to the floor. So the two reasons for taking a look at this is really, I mean, just look at it. It is really, really something special. And the speciality doesn't end with the body. If you take a look at the bottom, that is just a beautiful, beautiful work of art. Adrian, this is really something special. I was fortunate enough to drive this car 3 times, and now I'm showing its bad side because there's a missing insert, which is by definition then probably an excerpt. The car finished in 13th place, and I will also, as I go through this, I would just for reference mention where the cars ended in the original round 0 shootout, because that was pretty important. If you didn't do well there, you wouldn't participate. And just to see, out of my own idle curiosity, of how good of a ruler is that really. And I think one of the issues is that I did the round 0 on our 10X club track, and it is a very long, very fast sweeping track. So I will mention one specific anomaly a bit later, but just to mention that ALS's car finished 11th in the shootout and 13th overall at the end of 8 rounds, so not a big difference. What struck me about this car was it's been a while since round 0 and round 1, both of which were on fast tracks. The 10X club track for round 0, and then Perry's Rocket, very appropriately named, very fast sweeping track. And then just a couple of weeks ago, something completely different. Wes Weston's Garage's track is, I think without a shadow of doubt, the most technical and challenging and quite frankly difficult track that I've ever driven on in my life. And so my thoughts of Adrian's car is mostly based on the last round. Actually, on all the cars, the last round is uppermost in my mind. What struck me most with round 8 was the car needed more power. It was rock solid in terms of handling. It was really, you know, planted is such an overused word, but it was planted. At some stage you felt that you couldn't build up enough speed to really wreck it, which is of course a very good thing. And I think one of the things that we'll have to take a look at, and that's what we'll do as part of this process, is just take a look at the weights of the cars. Obviously, given the brass chassis, we realize that this is not going to be a lightweight. So let us just see. 92.4 grams. Now that really isn't all that extraordinary. It's a touch on the heavier side, but not that bad given that it's a resin body and a brass chassis. But okay, it is a dieted, it's not a full-blooded, full-plate brass chassis. But I think one of the issues is we'll see it's a 22.5 Predator motor, and I think that just made it a little bit difficult. Tires, nothing extraordinary. NSRs, I think they're super grips, but I'm not sure. You can even now see some of the little bit of balling on here, which is that's. Let's see. Can you see? Can you hear me? Can you see me now? But yeah. So, being a heavy car, and I'm not sure if these are Evos or not. By the same token, with what did I say? I said 92.4 grams, and I'll make a note of these. And the rear is 51.6. So obviously not far off that typical standard norm of 60-40. If we take a look at how low the car is, I'm eyeballing this myself now, and it is very difficult to see. But it is pretty low. Less than half a millimeter, I would say. And yeah, maybe, yeah, half a millimeter to a millimeter. In terms of body float, you can see that it's mounted 3 points, one at the back, 2 right in the front. It has it has a bit of body float, really not much at all. It's very little actually. And if you take a look at the movement, the rear movement is more chassis flex. It has a thin wire on both sides, piano wire, and that it gives a significant amount of movement in the motor. Okay, let's take it apart. I can do this, I'm sure. I suppose I'll have to say something while I'm doing this. It's a cloudy day in Abbotsford. Summer has ended at last, so I'm a happy camper. So inside of the body, really, there's really nothing too extraordinary about it. I thought it was resin, but if this is resin, it's very well done. Maybe 3D printed. It doesn't even look 3D printed. Adrian, you'll have to let us know how you actually did this. If it's a Strombecker body or something like that. Any case, beautifully done, nicely painted driver. You've lost one of the air intakes, so that's perhaps why it was down on power. From above, I just need to get myself aligned here. You can see it's a 22.5 Predator, so very mild motor. Independent front, and a rather small, looks like it's just a regular slotted guide, nothing too exciting. As an independent front, a lot of pod movement, if you want to call it that. You can see the thin. I don't know how close I can get if that can show you how thin the wires actually are. But all in all, it's just a beautiful, oh, and by the way, which is uncommon, it has ball bearings on the rear. So it's NSR wheels with the NSR, so NSR air wheels and NSR tires. And that is pretty much it for ALS number 66. Well done, Adrian, a beautiful piece of work. Okay, after number 66 ALS, the next innovative and interesting car is no Lakers' home built, is probably not a bad way to put it. A completely scratch built body, everything is, and what I found very interesting, what I found good, is unfortunately our hobby has become a hobby of old guys. And it's such a fresh breeze to find a young enthusiast like Yona that's coming on the scene and not just doing the same old that everybody else does. He goes his own way. And the only thing that concerns me a little bit is it would appear that they start, they give racing drivers licenses to 3-year-olds. If I take a look at the size of the driver, Yona, I think next time a bigger driver might be called for. Now, this is one where it's a bit interesting, in that if you take a look at how it started, this car really started like a house on fire. In round 0, Yona just cleaned up, and round 1, sort of the same thing, and never rose to the same heights again. I think this is part of this is the nature and the design and the character of the car. It is very powerful, it is very fast, and I can't recall in round 0 and round 1 that the car really chattered. But on Wes's track, it really was hard to drive. it not only chattered around the corners, it actually chattered when you accelerated. Now, I don't know when we open it up now if we will find anything broken or unsettled or whatever it is. But from the lofty beginnings of first in round 0 and first in round 1, in the end, car number 201 ended up in 9th place. A good finish by all accounts, especially from my perspective, where I'm looking from. That's a wonderful result. But yeah, it's if you asked me at round 0 and round 1 where this car would end up, I would have predicted that this would have been a podium car. And so I'm not sure what happened. Okay, if we take a look, let me just take a look myself to see here. Again, very low, very low. Oops, especially, it's not that low when you take it out of the slot. But I don't have a monitor here, so it's a bit difficult to see, to show you what I'm seeing. But yes, very low. Yeah. And let's see in terms of weight. Oops. It's an unbalanced car. It doesn't stand on its edge. Very, very light. 61.1 grams. That's uncommonly light. And that might be part of the reason. By the way, also you can see it has a very long guide. I can't remember which guide he actually has. Yeah. So, and then in terms of the weight at the rear, it's just 36.1. So actually a bit more than 60%. What? Yeah, 36.61. Yeah, so it's 65-ish%, I would say. Sorry, I got lost there in my math. A lot of body float. It really has a significant amount of movement. Very free. Yeah. Very, very wide tires. If I recall correctly, they're NSR Vanquish tires. They're the only ones that are that wide. But the important thing is to take a look at the chassis. This is Yona's own design, and he printed it himself. So I love this. It's the fact that it is very different. You can see it has a movable section, at the all the way hinged at the front, and with very small joins at the back. So it is a very flexible chassis. And we'll have to take a look at when I take it apart. I'm not sure what happens under the label here. Again, very long guide, and yeah, independent front wheels as well. Just hard tires, not. I can't see that they're coated with anything. The rear tires are very well finished, and they were very grippy. That's part of the problem with the chattering, was because too grippy for too little weight, I think. Alrighty. Let's see what makes it tick inside. Just single mounts front and rear, which is different to the myriad of thunder slots that we had. Yeah, there's nothing totally exceptional. It's just very light body. Good grief. Let's see what this is. 9.1 grams. I don't think it was lying on anything. 9.1 grams for the body. Extremely light and thin. But hey, it lasted the whole series, so can't complain too much. Okay, on the inside, I just want to take a look here. This is the Professor Motor Slim Can. The interesting thing is that this has, let's get this a bit closer, it has silicone washers under the lock nuts, so it used nylock nuts for movement with silicone washers under it. And yeah, this is, what am I seeing here? Okay, so this part it has a pod with a single tongue out front, and also with it has washers on both sides, under the nut and between the chassis and the pod. And I think at the back it looks like it's just the silicone washers under the nuts. There's something interesting happening over here that I can't quite make out. There's a piece of metal tongue running down here. It looks like this, it's not as if it's hinging or anything, but I might be unhinged. Please no comments. I think it is only for strength. Okay, it has adjustable adjustable front height, and that's about it. I think it's interesting that there's a complete rigid bushing or a tube between the two rear bushings. That should have helped with the chattering, but it must be very stiff. But Yona, excellent design. I think it's a beautiful job that you've done over here. Very innovative, and it's wonderful to see all of this in proxy racing. I'm sure you're going to be winning quite a few proxies in the future. Enjoy it. All right, everybody. So now we're moving on from the interesting My Choice cars to the 3 podium cars. And what a surprise! We have CGY racer Rob again on the podium of a proxy series. Rob, I don't know how you do it. It looks like it's not the secret of eternal youth, but you've figured out what to do, how to build a car, because every car I've ever driven of yours, and this is going back many years, It's always just been one of those, you can almost drive it with your eyes shut. And the interesting thing about Rob's cars, the unique thing about Rob's cars is the fact that they're not really unique at all. The special thing about them is I cannot find anything special. You know, I come from a operations management and management consulting background, and you know, I always learned in productivity that it's more important to do the right things than to do things right. And then when I look at a lot of these successful proxy cars, and who better than Rob's cars, what is so special about them is the fact that there's really nothing special at all. You take a look at it and you go, but why is this so fast? And all I can think is Rob has just learned the trick about the fine tweaks, the fine balances, making sure that nothing is special but everything is perfect. That might not make sense, but it does to me to a certain extent. Because really, if you take a look at it, Rob has been, he's gone his own way, because I think a lot of us, you know me, I'm a masochist, I've always built funny cars for proxies recently. He's gone and decided no thunder slot for me. And he's gone the different route of taking a slotted chassis and putting it under a thunder slot body. Now that is pretty novel, and one has to say, really, one of the problems I have with this proxy is that if we're not careful, this just dissolves into a thunder slot proxy, because not everything, the thunder slot has a real corner on the market in terms of beautiful thunder slot CanAm bodies and chassis that just work. So it's pretty brave of Rob to have gone and said, no, I'm going to actually rip out the thunder slot parts, and I'm going to do a slotted car. And congratulations also, Rob, on winning the concourse. It's you really done good in this one again. Okay, so let's take a look. Now, one of the other things, talking about not doing anything spectacularly but doing everything well, Rob did not win one race in the series, and still he ends up third. In round 0, he ended up in seventh place. So really that is an indication that perhaps not the fastest car on that track, but where he did his thing was that pretty much every round he was there or thereabouts in terms of a podium or a good finish. That is just, yeah, Mr. Reliable. Alrighty, so let's take a look. $82.1 grams. Again, if you were to say what should a CanAm proxy car weigh, I think it's pretty clear that you're going to say it's somewhere between 80-85 grams. I mean, there is no silver bullet, we know, but still, you'd be hard pressed to get a successful car outside of those parameters. And of the 80 odd grams, 50.8 is on the rear wheels. So a bit more than 60% on the rear wheels, but yeah. Some details on the car. The front wheels, solid axle. I cannot see it, it's hard rubber, and I cannot see any coating on it. It's quite smooth and unusual amount of lateral movement. I'm not sure if that was how the car started, with a little bit of up-down movement. And again, not an excessively long guide. It's just I think it's a slotted guide on a slotted chassis. What a novel concept. Who would have thunk it? Typical for Rob, the rear tires are very, very wide. He's gotten very close to maximizing what you can get out here. Body float, a fair amount of body float. And yeah, the actual mounting, he has one screw in front, one screw at the back, and he used the tabs on the side of the body to control the amount of movement. But just smooth, no mess, no fuss, body movement. With a Shark 25K motor, and it looks like he's actually glued on an extra piece of material on the side here to manage the the body movement. Frog in my throat. Okay, so let's see what the inside delivers up. He's even used slotted body screws, and yeah, looking at it again, I'm not sure if this is a slotted guide. Maybe not. And this is really vintage proxy design. Sidewinder slotted pod with the regular spherical bushings, or is it? Yeah, it doesn't look as if he's done anything strange there. Fair bit of weight on the pod, which is normal, and a little bit on the side, a little bit in front of the pod. So once again, if you were to write a little how-to on CanAm proxy car building, then these are just the straightforward things that everybody does. So Rob, how on earth, why are your cars so fast? This is just not right. Because of the older NSR motor, there's no motor screw, so the motor has just been glued in. So nothing exceptional there. Again, NSR tires, these feel like air hubs. So these are CB Design racing wheels, 13 millimeters I believe, because they have the air gap. But I sometimes despair, because really when you take a look at this car, the biggest standout feature of it is the fact that there are no standout features. It is just good, no, that's more than good, just excellent attention to detail and doing everything right. There's actually very, very little pod movement, and everything is of course smooth, no friction. Looks like an NSR gear? Not sure. Rob, congratulations, you've done it again, and I'm sure you'll keep on doing it. This is just, the hits just keep on coming. Well done. Alrighty then, moving right along. Now we get to number 2 on the podium. Tony, this car of yours was extremely consistent, extremely fast. It has not quite as much silver on it as what I'm used to on a Brumos car, but hey, it still is your very typical style of car. Nice paint, it looks very pretty. It's and this really is about as simple as it gets, I think. It's it is a custom paint job car, but if you take a look at the rest, it's a Thunderslot. It has a Thunderslot body, it has a Thunderslot chassis, it has a Thunderslot pod, and it even looks like it has a Thunderslot motor. So once again, whenever you drive one of Tony's cars in a proxy, you will know that you will have a real nice car on your hands. Nicely painted driver, by the way. It really, again, I sort of forget what things were like in round 0 and round 1. So the one uppermost in my mind is round 8. And what an extraordinary car. It's just such a treat to have driven this. Some of the things that stand out when you take a look at it immediately, yeah, it has reasonably wide tires, air wheels as well, NSR tires I believe, no tape on the pod. It has Thunderslot guide, I believe. Again, hard tires, independently rotating front wheels, and it looks like it might have been coated and then just smoothed down, but it might just be rock hard front tires. So not sure about that. Yeah, independently rotating as mentioned. Everything is beautifully smooth. Just a lovely slot car. In terms of where we started and where we finished, in round 0 this car finished 4th, and obviously in the series itself it ended up 2nd. Again, a very consistent performer all the time. There were a couple of hiccups, but by and large, Tony, your car was pretty much always there or thereabouts. Let us see. I'm curious to see what the pod mounting looks like inside here. A very light car, 70.3 grams. So, in terms of conventional wisdom, typically in the 80, slightly over 80 gram region, but this one is closer to a native Thunderslot. They're typically pretty light. and this one is somewhere in that vicinity. Of the 70 grams, 44.1 is at the back. So 4/7, that's around about 65%, I would say, just off the top of my head. Somebody can do the calculations and prove just how far I'm wrong, but for what that's worth. Now, in terms of pod movement, body float, there's a fair bit of movement, but it's well dampened. That's curious. There is some movement in the front, so it's but at the back it feels like there's almost no free play. Interesting. And so we will delve into its innards. As I said, from the outside, absolutely bone stock. No, it's a hard pod, but really it is a quintessential thunder slot. Yep. Boy, long screws. That did it. Nothing peculiar. It's just a nicely painted white kit, clearly. Okay, in terms of what we have inside, what I was most interested in was how the pod's movement was controlled, and the answer is springs. So spring mounts all round at all three ends, with a smallish amount of movement in front and a little bit more at the back. But because it's your standard thunder slot soft chassis, there's a tremendous amount of flex in the chassis itself. The motor is screwed in, and congratulations, Tony, you've won yourself a staple somewhere along the travels of the car. For the rest, it looks like, I'm not sure if it's ball bearings. I'll have to take a very quick look here. Looks like ball bearings at the back, so a bit uncommon, although ALS's car had them as well. Motor is screwed in. I cannot recall which motor it is. It can be just a regular thunder slot, but I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. And interestingly enough, I'm not sure if I think it's the way it started life. Just a small bit of lead in front of the motor, and a small bit of lead just behind the guide. So, and it looks like the front axle has been tubed, which is always a good idea if you can control the and he has used the inside two grub screws to set the height of, yeah, and the outside two over here to set the axle height. Again, air tires, air wheels. Tires still look beautiful. And I wanted to check, yeah. So really, when it comes down to brass tacks, it basically is an almost stock Thunderslot car with suspension added, a little bit of weight added, decent tires, well controlled front axle, and just all the basics done properly. It just goes to show. Apparently it's not rocket science, but apparently it is, because it's the same people that always win, and it's the same the rest of us that end up where we end up, which is not winning. So well done, Tony. This is just a great slot car. I mean, on Wes's track, this car was incredible. It truly was incredible. Such a joy to drive. Loved it. Good stuff. And so the end is near, and so we draw the final curtain. Is that how the song goes? Well, one person that did it his way was Audi 1 Alan. A dominant performance, Alan. I mean, this is just quite extraordinary. This car on Wes's track had to be not just seen to be believed. You had to drive it to just if you didn't drive it yourself, you couldn't believe it. It was just exceptional. Started off well in round 0. It was second after no Lakers, and then it just went from strength to strength and consistently, and in the end it was just completely and utterly dominant. It's yeah, what can one say? I had to look 58 times to check, is this a factory paint job or not? I still cannot believe it isn't a factory paint job. I think it's just extraordinary. It had my vote for the concourse, for what it's worth. And yeah, so started off well in second place in round 0, and just went from strength to strength from there. Again, it is unashamedly a Thunderslot. It has, in essence, the same basics as Tony's car. In other words, the normal soft standard Thunderslot chassis with a hard grey pod, and apparently a slotted 29k motor, which is a bit unusual. Also, Thunderslot guide. I mean, why mess with a good thing? CB design 15 by 11 at the back. And the good news is, if people have been concerned about replacement tires for the late and lamented good NSRs, non-Evo NSRs, these are Thunderslot TYR 004Rs. They were quite extraordinary on Wes's track. After 8 rounds, they look beautiful. So if this is how TYR 004s last, then this can become the new normal, I think. Fair bit of body float, and yeah, the normal body mounts, standard slotted body mounts. A fair bit of pod movement, very well controlled. I can't believe it's just a tape. There must be something else happening inside there, but we'll see. And it weighs. Let's start with all of it. 77.6, so heavier than Tony's car, but a touch on the light side for proxies, but marginally. .1 at the back. Right, so it's 77.47, so there's 30 grams on the front. So it is again close to the 35-65 weight distribution. A little bit of tape, as I said. It's okay. We've had a bit of an interruption there because my camera's battery died. Can't quite remember where I was, but yeah, it's very typical standard thunder slot. It's interesting, this the very small piece of tape here, and fixed front wheels, very narrow and not too hard. It's actually pretty grippy. I believe it's their PSR, so I've never used those or seen those before. Yeah, so let us take a look at the inner workings. Body is basically a thunder slot body. But this does look like factory paint. Alan, I'll have to check with you because this is too good to be true. Okay, on the inside, and I dropped a screw, but I will have to find that again. Right. I'm trying to figure out what is controlling the movement. And no suspension. It's Alan has used the suspension nuts on the pod, so there's nice free movement and a fair amount of it. There's quite a lot of movement on the pod at the back, not as much on the front. Very little on the front, but yeah, there's nothing other than that single piece of tape. I see nothing. What am I missing? currently nothing. Scale Auto plastic gears and standard weight on the pod, standard little bit of weight on the chassis just in front, solid front axle, grub screws on the front, in the middle, grub screws on the side. So all pretty unchanged. This is about as close as to a stock Thunder slot again as you can get. The standout things here obviously are that it's a 29K slotted motor, which I don't think is all that common in the series, and Scale Auto plastic gears. It was very quiet. The one weird thing about this car is the front axle squeaked. It squeaked on round 8, and I remember that actually it squeaked at the beginning of the round. Very little play out up front. Well controlled, as Thunder slot guide. It really is, again, just an example of just the basics and just doing it pretty much perfectly. This is, Alan, I don't know if you've hidden something else somewhere else, but this car was just extraordinary. I mean, it was dominant. The way that it ran away from the field in round 8 was just something to behold. Quite special. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating in the series. It's been a hoot. We'll do it again at some stage, I suppose. And now I'll be packing up all the cars and sending them back home. Congratulations again to the podium winners, and all the very best to everybody. Cheers.